Hello, I really hope you're all doing well today. I hope you had a lovely weekend. I am really excited to be making this video today because firstly, I cannot remember the last time that I made a favourites video, and also I know I've spoken about it in lots of other videos, but towards the end of last year, I was just feeling a little bit burnt out with my plants. I wasn't enjoying my plant care in the way that I like to be. It really just felt more like a chore. And going into this year, this last month, I just feel like I've really got my buzz back and I have been loving plant care so much. I've just been appreciating things in a way that I haven't done in a really long time, and it is a really lovely feeling. And for that reason, I feel like I've got a lot to talk about, and it was actually really difficult to just bring 10 favourite plants over to show you today, but I have just whittled it down to 10 and I am going to take you through them. But first, if you're new here, hi, my name's Claire and this is Yoli. I make videos all about houseplant care, sharing tips and tricks I've learnt over the years to help keep your plants happy and healthy. And I thought I'd mix things up a bit, so as well as taking you through my favourite plants, I'm also going to take you through some fun facts, some growing tips, and just some things that I wish I'd known sooner. So yes, I hope you enjoy it. Let's get into it. So the first one's a plant that I haven't spoken about in ages. In fact, one of you the other day was asking if I still owned this plant, and I do. I just very rarely speak about it. It is the Caladium Lindeni. And this one is so beautiful. It's native to Colombia, and it was previously classified as Xanathosoma. I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it. It's spelled with an X. I'll put the name on the screen, but it is now classified as a caladium. And obviously, looking at it, it's very different to what you might usually think when you hear caladium. And I'm personally not a massive fan of other species of caladium within the genus. They don't, for me, tick that many boxes. I find them quite difficult plants and not that rewarding to grow. That's not to say that some people don't get huge joy out of growing them. I used to be a massive caladium person myself, but my love is now purely reserved for this one. And I got this one, I think at the beginning of last year. And to be honest, I kind of hesitated before getting this plant again because I'd previously had a Caladium Lindeni and I had struggled so much with it. I tried growing it in lots of different conditions, in lots of different mediums, and I just couldn't strike the right balance. I couldn't get it out of the one leaf club. It just, anytime it gave me a new leaf, the old one was dying back. And in the end, I can't remember if I actually if I swapped it with someone or what happened to that plant. I don't know, the plant might have even died. I genuinely don't know. This was a couple of years ago now. But I saw this one and I was like, oh my goodness, it is beautiful. I would love to give it another go, but I was a little bit nervous because, as I say, my track record with this plant wasn't great. And to be completely honest, if I had to give you a top tip for this plant, it would probably just be, and this goes for a lot of plants, but I think we often overcomplicate things. Once you've found a spot that this plant is happy in, which for me is by a north-facing window, kind of just standard room humidity, kind of 50% humidity, just leave it alone. Because honestly, this is a plant that I really don't do anything to now. And I'm always a little bit hesitant when people say, oh, a plant thrives on neglect. No plant thrives on complete neglect. But this is one that I would put in that category because, as I say, there's very little that I do. I've got it growing in a semi-hydro substrate at the moment. This is Lechuza Pon, the Lechuza Pon equivalent from Soil Ninja that doesn't contain any added fertiliser. And I've just got it in a plastic pop cover and I create a little reservoir underneath and I just fill that reservoir as and when I think of it. And it is a plant that I would absolutely love to grow through here in this room because, as I say, I think it is stunning and I would love to be able to see it all the time and appreciate it. But I have got better now at moving some of my lower maintenance plants into the bedroom because I'm just trying to have a little bit of a declutter, readjust in my collection to make things a bit more manageable for myself. And contrary to what I thought originally with this plant, I find this one to be very low maintenance, hence why it is through in the bedroom. And I know I said that it is in front of a north-facing window through there, and that actually is providing perfect light for this plant, because I know caladiums can be seasonal plants. They very much can die back in the winter months, and then you have to store the tubers and regrow them. I haven't had this issue at all. This plant has continued to put out new growth for me, and although I haven't been very good at rotating it, its growth is not particularly even at the moment. It's still looking very healthy, it's still looking very full, and we've just come into February here in the UK, so we are still very much in winter, but we are approaching spring, and this one has shown no signs at all of dying back, which makes me very happy. Because I think for me, that's part of the reason that I kind of went off caladiums a little bit, just because I don't like having to take a break with my plants and chop them back and then kind of start from scratch. I know sometimes I will do intentional resets where I'll chop them back and begin again. But I don't like the seasons dictating that, and that is just a personal thing for me. But this is one that has not done that. So yeah, it's one that I would highly recommend, and I'm super, super excited to see how it grows for me this year. And this next one is a fairly new addition to my collection, and I have shown you it already this year, but I am just totally in love with it. And it is the Drona Cherry Bagana. And I firstly just think that is such a beautiful name. Like, it just rolls off the tongue. Cherry Bagana, I just think is so pretty. But this is a plant that I was very kindly sent by one of you guys actually at the beginning of the year. And I know I said when I first got the plant that I was a little bit concerned because it had been very cold. I did lose a few of its leaves originally, and I was like, oh, it seems like one that might be quite sensitive. Will it grow back? And as you can see, in the space of like less than 4 weeks, it is giving me so much growth. So I'm super happy about that. And I'd never even heard of this plant before. So I've done a lot of digging, a lot of research. I've spoken to a lot of you guys about it. And this one is supposedly native to the rainforests of Ecuador, I believe. And I've heard mixed things on whether or not it's in the African violet family. And if anybody can confirm or deny, that would be really useful for me, because I'm not massive on African violets myself. I like them, but I don't currently have any in my collection. I thought like it would explain a lot, because like the texture of this one is very, I want to say like waxy leaves, like almost like Hoya meets rubber plant. However, if I was to bend them, I'm pretty sure they'd snap. They don't feel quite as robust. But the other really amazing thing with this plant that I've noticed when I was doing my research is that it is capable of producing the most gorgeous flowers. And if I can find a picture, I'll put them on the screen just there. And I feel like this is going to sound like a weird thing to say, but I've never massively been into flowering houseplants. Like, I've never been massive on orchids. When a plant flowers for me, typically, like, I'm happy about it, because I feel like a lot of the time the plant's probably happy. It's entering a pollination phase, which always excites me because there's opportunities there. But the actual look of the flowers doesn't really do that much for me. But looking at these ones, they do look stunning. So if I could get this one to flower, I would be so happy. But currently, as you can see, it is just covered in cling film in a little plastic cup in sphagnum moss. And I must confess, this is how it arrived. I haven't touched it yet. I haven't done anything to it so far, just because the plant's been acclimating to my space. And to be honest, whilst I'm still learning about this plant and figuring out what kind of substrate or soil mix it needs, it's clearly happy because it's giving me so much new growth. So I'm like, why change it? Why change things up? So yeah, this is very much a learning project. This is very much a plant that I'm learning about at the moment. So I don't currently have any care tips, apart from the fact that it is loving cabinet life. And I think that this is, oh my God, I can see 2 more leaves just there starting to appear as well. This is very good growth for a very short period of time, so I'm guessing it is quite a fast grower. But yeah, if anyone could let me know more about it, I love hearing from first-hand experience, so please do let me know in the comments. But yeah, it's just one that is really exciting me at the moment. And another one that I still cannot quite believe I own is this beautiful fern leaf cactus. And oh my God, I have wanted a big fern leaf cactus like this for such a long time. I'm such a massive fan of jungle cacti as it is, and this one is just stunning. Naturally, it's native to Mexico, and for that reason, because it is a jungle cacti, it's a brilliant one to get. It's very similar to the fishbone cactus, actually, in the same family. But if you do have lots of tropical houseplants that need quite high levels of humidity, because obviously if you bring lots of desert cacti into your home that typically prefer much drier conditions, they can sometimes struggle with the high levels of humidity, but this one just laps it up. And I just feel really, as I said, oh my God, I feel like this plant is making me a little bit giddy. I just feel really grateful, is the word, grateful to finally own this plant. Because although once it gets going, it is a fairly fast grower compared to a lot of my other tropical like foliage plants, it is still quite slow. It is very succulent, and typically that is a sign that plants can be a little bit slower to grow. And I've potted my original little fern leaf cactus just at the top with it here because I did already have one and I was just being a little bit impatient, so I decided to bite the bullet and get myself this one. But apparently, and this literally blew my mind, in its natural habitat, this one is capable of producing leaves that are 1.8 meters wide. I'm not talking long, I'm talking literally width. So that is insane. That's just under 2 meters, and that is crazy. And although I know that's very unlikely to happen, firstly in a home environment, but also in a UK home environment without a huge amount of grow lights, I'm gonna try and grow this one as big and as beautiful as I possibly can. I've currently got it hanging in my south-facing window, which is just behind where I'm filming now. And although it's not particularly sunny at the moment, it is getting good levels of light and the plant does seem happy. And I haven't repotted this plant yet. As I say, it is fairly early days and I try not to disrupt things too much unless I need to. All I've done is transfer my other fern leaf cactus into the same pot. And looking at the mix it's in, I'm not quite sure what it is, but it kind of just looks like, almost like, I don't know, it might have some, I don't know, tree fern fibre, coir, something like that in there. But this is an epiphytic cactus, so that means in its natural habitat, it will naturally grow attached to other plants, trees, shrubs, rocks. So typically that does mean they like a lot of texture in their soil. They like lots of bark, they like tree fern fibre, they like all the things that they can kind of really grip onto. So yeah, when you're trying to replicate its natural growing conditions, those are really important things to bear in mind, as well as the fact that although it is a jungle cactus, it does need its substrate to be very well draining. So I will bear that in mind when I come to repot it. But for the time being, it's growing very happily. It's making me very happy, and I can't wait to see what it does for me this year. I've never seen one flower before. My fishbone cactus has flowered, never seen this one flower. So maybe that will be my goal. If I could get it to flower, I'd be very happy. And another one that I haven't shown you in a while because it's been on a little bit of a journey is my Allocacia sinuata, and it's just given me that gorgeous new leaf. How beautiful is that? And this one's native to the Philippines, but I didn't realise this is actually critically endangered in its natural habitat. So it's pretty much cultivated in a home environment, which makes me even more, not that I wasn't keen to bring out the best in this plant, but it just, when you hear things like that, it just makes me even more keen to, I don't know, preserve, propagate, continue to spread the love with this plant, because obviously it's not going to be around forever unless we do that. It makes you feel like, I don't know, it gives you a sense of responsibility, and that's something we often forget about with houseplants, because I've spoken before about how plant poaching is such a big thing, and with the society we live in where plants can become so disposable, like, oh, it's just died, I'll go out and buy another one. It just is a little reminder that it's not that simple, and we do need to really respect nature. So besides the fact that this is just a stunningly beautiful Allocacia, I feel incredibly lucky and incredibly grateful to own it. And this was actually another plant swap one. This was, I think it was last year's plant swap. There were a few plant swaps last year, but it was one of the London ones I got this one at. And as I say, it has been on a little bit of a journey, and this leaf here is actually getting ready, I think, to probably die back. You can see it's a little bit yellow, but I had this plant since I got it pretty much potted in a similar way to how it's potted now, in a semi-hydro substrate. I just create a little reservoir at the bottom. But initially, and I think it's because I didn't rinse my semi-hydro properly, which is something I'm getting so much better at, but a lot of dust built up around the bottom and it did actually start to rot. And fortunately, it didn't spread to the rhizome, because with alocasias, if the rhizome just here, kind of like the tuberous bulb, if that starts to rot, most of the time there's no saving the plants. There's absolutely nothing that can bring it back, which is heartbreaking, and it has happened to me before. But luckily with this one, I caught it early. It was just roots. I chopped the roots right back. And yeah, since then it has been fine, and I can see it's got some really lovely healthy roots in there now. But I think it is probably just an alocasia that is a little bit more sensitive than some of my other ones. So it's one that I keep under very close supervision. I never fill the reservoir too high. Oh, I can also see it's got a few corms in there, which is really exciting. Really exciting. So I can divide them and maybe take some back to the plant swap. I really want to spread the love with this plant because I just think it's gorgeous. But what I've noticed as well in my time of growing it so far is that it's got a very different structure to a lot of my other alocasias. As you can see, it's quite kind of, I know it can size up a little bit, but I've never seen one that's huge. It's quite compact in its growth compared to, like, I'm looking at my Alocasia Frydek that's right in front of me, or like the Green Shield, for example. They can be quite like tall and leggy, whereas this one is just quite small, quite compact, quite condensed in its growth. And I really like that. I think they just look like, its leaves look like little jewels. And out of all of my alocasias currently, and this could be because I've been having issues, but I would say it is probably the slowest to grow. I have, as I say, had a little bit of leaf cycling. I've chopped it back a few times, but it's taken a good couple of months to get a new leaf on it since I had the last one. And bearing in mind, this is one that I keep in my cabinet. It's right under a grow light. It's definitely not the fastest one in my collection. I have also heard with this plant that despite the fact that I'm growing mine in a cabinet, it doesn't need to be a cabinet plant. This is one that deals much better with fluctuations in humidity, for example. It doesn't need massively, massively high humidity levels in order to thrive. So I could take it out and see how it does. But for the time being, it's growing there, and I just think it is gorgeous. Oh, and then I'm going to have to put some clips in of this next one, because usually I bring it over and show you, but I've just trellised it, so I cannot do that anymore. But it is my Hoya Latifolia Sarawak, and I'm so excited to be able to actually give you a good, exciting update on this plant now, because for such a long time, I feel like I've just been like, I really like this plant, but it's only got 3 leaves. And in the last month and a half, it put out that really big long tendril, and I did see the start of some leaves, and I was like, right, okay, now is the time that I need to get it onto a trellis. And I've been just so undecided about which Hoya trellises I actually like. So for the time being, I've just wound it round my shelves that I've put up, and it seems to be doing the job. The leaves are dramatically sizing up. I mean, pretty much every time I go back and look at them every day, they are growing in size. So I'm really hoping I can get some amazing growth off it this year. And this is a Hoya, I mean, it's in the name, but it is it's a Hoya Latifolia from Sarawak. And I'm learning more and more about Hoyas the more I own Hoyas and the more I speak to you guys in the community, because I'm as I say, I'm very much still learning with all of this. But Hoya Latifolia does very much vary in form. For example, I've got another Hoya Latifolia that I'll put a clip in of just here. And as you can see, although there are similarities to them, structurally and shape-wise, they are really quite different. And that one, I'm actually not sure where that Hoya is from, but as I say, my Latifolia Sarawak does have a very distinct form to it. And I just think it's gorgeous. I think it's so gorgeous. So yeah, if you are in any doubt about getting your Hoyas onto a trellis, this is the reason to do it. It very much helps to encourage new growth. Even if you think it can be done without it, it just helps to kickstart things. And also, and I always have to remind myself of this as well, when you are trellising your Hoyas, just make sure you wind the tendril anti-clockwise, because that's the way that they naturally tendril. And if you wind it clockwise, then you're essentially stopping your, like, you're inhibiting what it wants to do. It's not going to suddenly start climbing clockwise for you. So yeah, I would highly recommend going anti-clockwise. But yeah, it's always been up there with my favourite plants, because I think it is just wonderful. It is such a statement, weird plant, but I love it so much. And yeah, just can't wait to see what it does for me next. And the next one is behind me here. And it is my Variegated Philodendron Bell Marks. And as you can see, it is living in an area that doesn't get a huge amount of natural light. I've thought many times about running a grow light under the TV and just kind of creating a little bit more light for those plants. But to be honest, while I'm still getting really good growth, I'm gonna save on electric. So yeah, this one is giving me beautiful growth. And this one's native to South America, and it gets its name from the architect Roberto Burle Marx, I believe, who was the first one to use native plants in his designs. I believe he was Brazilian. And there's obviously lots of plants that are named Burle Marx, Burle Marxii, and as I say, I think that is the reason for that. But I love the standard philodendron Burle Marx. I think it is such a beautiful philodendron. It grows like a weed. It's very low maintenance. It's a fantastic beginner plant in my opinion. But the variegated one is just gorgeous. And I know that mine isn't highly variegated, but it's just got little kind of splashes here and there and dapples. And it's variegation that I enjoy because it feels quite purposeful. And I don't know what other word to use instead of purposeful. Like, sometimes you'll see a plant, and like, to be honest, I feel this way a lot about the variegated anthuriums that we're seeing at the moment. Sometimes you'll see a plant with variegation that just kind of makes the plant look a bit unwell. It almost looks like, I don't know, it almost looks like a disease. I've often looked at plants and be like, is that mosaic disease or is that actually a healthy plant? And with this one, I think it just almost looks like it's been brushed very lightly with a paintbrush. And although it's not block variegation, I just think it is lovely. And to be honest, although this is a plant that does not have stable variegation, and I have actually in fact got a pretty much completely green leaf just here, in my experience chopping the plant back, with some plants, like with some variegated plants, if you chop them back to preserve the variegation, they will take ages to size up again. They'll take ages to give you any new growth. There's then no guarantee that it's even going to be variegated. But so far with this one, I've only made one chop in the time that I've had it because I haven't had this one that long. But it just it bounced back within what felt like weeks, and it was giving me growth that is the same size. So I'm kind of not too worried about that for the time being. I know as well, if I wanted to encourage the variegation to be more prominent, moving it to a higher light spot would probably be an option. So yeah, that takes me back to my grow light idea. I don't know, but for the time being, as I say, I'm very happy with how it's growing for me. It is just one that I've got, again, in semi-hydro, and this is actually an old candle pot that I used, and I just boiled up the water, got the wax out, gave it a good wash, and now I'm using to grow for semi-hydroponics. I love doing that with candle containers because they're not like jars that go in at the top. They just kind of keep their shape, and especially if you're working with a plant like this that gets very rooty and you don't want to have to pull it through a small hole, it's just a really nice way of doing it. So yeah, I love this plant. I'm really happy with how it's doing, and fingers crossed it keeps doing well for me as time goes on this year. So this next one's one that I've actually never shown you before, and up until recently there wasn't really much to show, but it is a dragon fruit cactus, and this one's native to Central and South America. But to be honest, I'm just starting to kind of learn more about this plant now, because I wasn't entirely sure that that's what it was at first. I'm trying to think when it was that I picked this one up. I think it was the beginning of last year, around about. And I picked it up from a rescue shelf at a garden centre, and To be honest, I think I just felt sorry for it when I was there. I didn't actually think that I'd be able to get it to grow into anything, because it had about 3 or 4 bits of cactus coming out of the pot and the rest of it was just mush. It had been severely overwatered and it was not looking good at all. And I took it home and I just thought, okay, let's give this a go. And slowly but surely it has started to grow. And I was asking some of you over on Instagram recently what you thought this plant was, and a lot of you came back saying it was a dragon fruit cactus. So yeah, I've just, as I say, started to learn more and more about it. But something very interesting that I found out is that in Florida, the dragon fruit cactus is actually considered an invasive species. And that makes me think that when this one gets going, it must be pretty fast growing, just because typically invasive species, I mean, for example, pothos is considered an invasive species in lots of areas of the world. In the UK here, English ivy is considered invasive, and these are all plants that are typically very robust, very hardy, and very fast growing. So it kind of explains perhaps why I was able to get the plant to bounce back as well as it has, and hopefully why it's going to continue to give me lots of beautiful, beautiful growth. Because at the moment, its growth is still like quite juvenile and quite fragile. Like I feel like I could just squish it very easily with my fingers. But when I look up pictures, and again, I'll put one on the screen here, when I look up pictures of this plant mature, it almost looks like an epiphyllum to me. It almost looks like, the one that sprung to mind for me was the Epiphyllum ackermanii, which I actually have in my collection already. And I don't know if the texture kind of changes. It looks like its prickles change and evolve as the plant matures. The only thing that would potentially make me part with this plant is, so depending on the prickles, at the moment, as you can see, they are very fine and they're actually fairly soft. But if they turn into glycoids, which are, I don't know how to describe them, really thin, fine, soft looking prickles that just get stuck in your hands, that is when I would part with this plant. And I have vowed that I will not have plants like that in my collection again. If you've been on my channel for a while, you'll know a bunny ears cactus fell on my pillow a few years ago and it was just awful, and that was the line for me. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen, because I've really formed a lovely relationship with this plant and I'd like it to keep growing beautifully for me, and I want to bring out the best in it. So yeah, it's also one that obviously in its natural habitat is capable of producing dragon fruit. And I think it's very unlikely in my environment here, again, without the use of grow lights and heaters and all that sort of stuff to replicate its natural conditions, I think it's very unlikely it would fruit. But oh my goodness, if it did, I would be so happy. So who knows, maybe it's possible. If you've managed to achieve this, let me know. But yeah, it's just one that I feel very, very proud of. And then this next one is another plant swap one, and this is the Mandula Pothos. And this has actually been on several of my favourites lists since I first got it, because I just think it is the coolest pothos. I think it is so, so, so awesome. And pothos are generally native to the South Pacific Islands, I believe. But this one, and this is an interesting fact that I found out, the Mandula Pothos is actually created, I believe, in a lab by crossbreeding thousands of different types of pothos with a branch mutation. And that's apparently where a lot of like highly variegated types of epipremnum come from. Because yeah, this one has got such a high balance of variegation. And also, again, considering I do keep it in fairly low light conditions or like medium lighting conditions, it hasn't given me any issues because of that. A lot of very highly variegated plants would give you a lot of issues, and I don't know if it's just because I've done the acclimation process quite slowly, but this one has never given me any grief at all. But the one thing that I have noticed with this, and in fact very similarly to the Pothos Enjoy, which I believe is like one of hundreds of parent plants of this one. They're quite similar in a lot of ways, but I have noticed that the white patches of variegation do require slightly higher humidity levels compared to the variegation on like the golden pothos, for example, or the marble queen. They do brown and crisp up quite easily if you don't have high enough humidity levels. And I'm not talking like ridiculously high humidity, I'm just saying like above about 50%. It is just a little bit more sensitive than other types of pothos. But yeah, it's another type of variegated plants that I just absolutely adore. And I know I spoke earlier in the video about how certain types of variegation can sometimes, I don't know, for me, just make the plant look a little bit unwell. They're not exactly the sort of thing that I love. But this one, I just think is gorgeous. You've got so many textures. No leaf is the same. It is just such a unique, beautiful balance of variegation in this plant, and yeah, I just love it. I've been saying for a while as well, I might chop and propagate it and try and get it a little bit fuller and bushier, and I could absolutely do that, but I think just because it's growing so beautifully for me at the moment and it's not the fastest one in the world to grow, I'm a little bit hesitant to do so. So I think what I will probably try and do this year is acquire some more cuttings of this plant and then pot them up together and try and get it a little bit fuller that way. But yeah, I think all things considered, I think it's done very well for me in the last year. I think it's given me beautiful growth, and yeah, it's one that's made me really happy. And this next one is one that I am so incredibly excited to have in my collection again. I think it is just beautiful. I think it is one of the most underrated houseplants in my opinion. It is the string of pearls, and I just adore it. I think it is such a gorgeous trailing succulent, and on the whole, very easy to grow. And this one was very kindly sent to me by Green Plant Shops in Edinburgh. I'll put their Instagram page just there. But I included it on my wishlist plants video at the beginning of the year, and bless their hearts, they very kindly reached out to me and said, we've got some, would you like one? And yeah, it was very kind of them. So thank you if you're watching. I am over the moon with it. And its Latin name is Senecio rolianus, and I am always really fascinated to look at other Senecio within the genus, because like, for example, Senecio haworthii is in the same family as this, and just looking at them you would not think that they were related in the slightest. So yeah, I find it a very varied genus to look at. But yeah, the string of pearls is native, I believe, to Southwest Africa, so it does require very dry conditions. And this is one that I think, for that reason, in the past, there's been a few reasons that I will take you through in a minute why I have struggled with the string of pearls. But one of the reasons I think is that I have grown it too close to a humidifier, and obviously it's a plant that doesn't like that. The other main thing that has brought down my string of pearls in the past is mealybugs. And oh my goodness, mealybugs. When mealybugs strike, they can be a nightmare on pretty much any plant, but with the string of pearls, because its little pearls are so delicate and there's so many little nooks and crannies for pests to be able to get into, when mealybugs got into mine, I just could not get them gone. I couldn't get them gone. So believe me, I am checking this plant like a hawk, and I am just going to make sure that I am far more vigilant with my pest checking and my pest treating this year than I was last year. And you might be looking at this one thinking it looks a little bit sad at the top, and the only reason for that is because, as I've already said, it's been very cold here in the UK, and this is a plant that doesn't cope amazingly with fluctuations in temperature. It was shipped to me when it was very cold, and so there has been a few little strands at the top that have lost, I was going to say beads, have lost their little pearls. And it has suffered a little bit of cold damage. So it's in my rehab corner at the moment. It's bouncing back well. The growth that it has got here is looking super full and super healthy. So yeah, I'm very, very excited to see how it gets on this year. But the one thing that I'm always a little bit baffled about with string of pearls, and I don't know if any of you might be able to help me answer this question, but the last time I had a string of pearls, it also came potted in a pot like this, a very, very tall pot. And from what I know about this plant, because they are so susceptible to issues caused by overwatering, the last thing you want is to overwhelm their root systems. So I don't know why they are grown in such a tall pot. But the fact that I've received two now that have been like this makes me think that there's a reason. So yeah, if you know, please do let me know down in the comments below, because it feels wrong to me and I feel like I want to change this. But yeah, let me know. And I know I said that there was no order to this list, but I have saved what I think is, for me, the most exciting one till last. And it is my Anthurium Paladflorum. And oh my goodness, just look at how beautiful and velvety those leaves are. This has been a wish list plant of mine for such a long time, and it is one that I bought for myself at the beginning of this year, and I have absolutely zero regrets because it has made me so happy this last month. I cannot even explain. There's been days where I haven't felt particularly like doing plant care, where there's things I haven't wanted to go and look at, and I've just been like, we'll go and check on this plant first, and it just, without sounding like an absolute weirdo, it just brightens my day. And this one is native. The species is native to West Ecuador, I think, and in its natural habitat, it is capable of producing leaves that are 2 meters in length, which just blows my mind. It absolutely blows my mind. And I hear from the research that I've done that it does tend to be a fairly easy plant to grow in a UK home environment. So I'm really hoping that I can get it to size up a lot this year. As you can see, it has just started giving me its very first new leaf, and this is the first day actually looking at it that it's looking anything like a leaf. It was just looking like a little rolled up like piece of green paper up until today, but yeah, it has just started unfurling. So I'm hoping, considering its last leaf was pretty big, I'm hoping this one might be even bigger. But yeah, it is an epiphytic plant, and I to be honest, I have switched out the way that I'm growing a lot of my anthuriums this year. I'm changing lots of things up. I'm doing lots of experimenting. I'm trying to find ways to get the best out of them because I feel like light, humidity wise, I can offer good conditions. I think a lot of it comes down to the substrate, and that's something that I've been experimenting with over the last year. I've been playing about a lot with like semi-hydro, for example. And what I am trying now, and what has seemed to work really well for a lot of my anthuriums so far, is a really chunky base mix with lots of orchid bark and tree fern fibre. And that's what I've got it potted in at the moment. And then this little dome, which is actually the top of a milkshake cup, has just got sphagnum moss around the top, and that's just helping to keep all of the exposed aerial roots nice and hydrated, essentially air layering them and encouraging them to root down into the substrate. But yeah, I just love this plant more than anything in the world, so I had to put it on this list, and I feel like it's going to be one that I'm going to struggle not to talk about all the time this year because it is just making me so excited. So yeah. Those are the plants that I brought over for this video. But do let me know what some of your favourite plants at the moment are down in the comments below. As always, I absolutely love getting inspired by you guys. There's a lot of the time where someone will say a plant and I'm like, oh my God, I completely forgot about that one. Or you'll tell me about a plant I've never heard of before. So yeah, do let me know what some of your favourites are. And I really hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, have a lovely day, and I will see you in the next video.
Stay sexy, plant lovers.